Welcome to Creature Guide Live Daily News. Sorry, I bit of a space there. My name is Ethan. Or put your thoughts into the comments about the different species of prehistoric animals, and let's go into the first article. Okay, from Sci News. 3 million-year-old fossil from New Zealand rewrites evolutionary history of true seals. So this is back at least towards the very end of the Pliocene, like right around the last 500,000 years. Living true seals are about half a million years before the Ice Age or the Pleistocene epoch would begin. Living true seals are the most widely dispersed semi aquatic marine mammals and comprise geographically separate northern and southern groups. Both are thought to have evolved in the North Atlantic, with only two lineages subsequently crossing the equator. So the North Atlantic Sea or Ocean takes place between the northeastern part of North America, or between like Greenland, Eastern Canada, and Western Europe, as well as you could possibly even say part of Western Northern Africa. So the third and oldest lineage, the monk seals, has been interpreted as exclusively northern and subtropical throughout their entire history. However, an international team of paleontologists now describes a new species of extinct monk seal that lived during the Pliocene epoch in New Zealand, the first of its kind from the southern hemisphere. Actually, let's bring up a monk seal. It's just Monk and then Seal for a seal. I believe the monk seal is over in Antarctica. However, that is one of those seals I haven't looked at in a while. Oh, whoa. Oh, yeah. This is the seal that this can occur to. I don't know what specifically it is and why this occurs specifically. And I also do wonder if it's still a mystery because it very well might be. Um, I'm not sure if it's like some eel that happens to seek refuge into their nostril. Okay, so it is a species of eel. But I think it's a mystery as to why this still occurs within this seal species. Okay, I don't think it's yeah, it's a bit further north from Antarctica. Maybe it's adjacent to certain parts of yeah, certain areas of the Pacific. So yeah, I think it's
The picture was actually, I think, in Hawaii.
okay, so they are much further north. I'm thinking of a different species of seal altogether. But they are somewhat carnivorous, so they're going after like different species of squids or cephalopods within the region, and even going after different types of marine crustaceans, also feeding on other different species of fish. They're not really going after other species of cetaceans in the region or like different species of whales or dolphins, or specifically younger individuals. They can go after seabirds now and then, very similar to like different elephant seals, which they are closely related to. However, an international team of paleontologists now describes a new species of extinct monk seal that lived during the oh, I think I already said that. So the first of its kind from the southern hemisphere. Interesting. Okay. Wow. Whoa. He almost looks like a bit of a leopard seal to an extent, and not so much like even the other monk seals of today. Even though leopard seals have still a more pronounced sort of a jaw or a bit of an elongated snout. I would say the tail, though, is not very far off. The newly identified monk seal lived in the waters around New Zealand some 3 million years ago. Named Eomonachus belegarensis, the marine creature was around 2.5 meters or 8.2 feet in length and has a mass between 200 and 250 kilograms. So this is pushing somewhere around 410 to maybe a little over 470 pounds. So it's a medium sized species of seal, considering elephant seals can reach over in northern elephant seals specifically, can reach around 4 tons when fully grown, at least the bulls. This new species of extinct monk seal is the first of its kind from the southern hemisphere. Its discovery really turned seal evolution on its head, said lead author James Rule, a PhD candidate in the Biomedicine Discovery Institute at Monash University and Museums Victoria. Okay, so let's bring up something that possibly might have hunted this animal. Brimophes setter. So Brimopheseter. Looks like a whale. So this is a species of whale from the Pliocene epoch, except it wasn't exactly as friendly as different species of baleen-toothed whales of today, such as humpbacks, gray whales, baleen whales in general. So their teeth are made up of keratin, or the same substance our fingernails and hair are made out of. This is a bit closer to something like an orca or even a sperm whale, but it has much more robust teeth, or at least teeth that are designed for crushing through bone of other species of whales. Yeah, he seems a bit aggressive in this instance and could possibly be your pet, but in reality, he would probably want to make a snack out of any species of whale today, even though orcas would try to avoid this specific species. Who else? The interesting thing is, it seems that very close relatives of today's humpback whales, or possibly even the species itself, was around during the Pliocene or just before the Ice Age, and this creature would have likely have hunted the different species of baleen-toothed whales of today. It also could have likely coexisted with different species of larger fish, such as the massive Otodus megalodon, which would have dwarfed this creature. However, if this animal hunted in pods when taking on like larger species of whales, it's likely that at least the megalodon, but even possibly itself, might have just simply tried to avoid each other for the most part. It is interesting. I mean, when looking at like the front teeth of this animal, they do extend towards the front of its body, somewhat, which is not what you see in many other species of at least carnivorous animals in general, especially if you're looking at different species of carnivorous theropod dinosaurs. In many cases, there's a handful of species where it's similar to this whale, where they might extend forward slightly, at least the front incisor teeth. But in usually, you have it where, the teeth are directly facing up or down. But this is interesting. I think they were just feeding on some smaller shark. They could have been interpreting like a smaller megalodon. Yeah, so this would have been around 4 million years ago in the Atlantic, possibly even the Pacific Ocean. Uh,
Nobody can hear me. He saw Scooby fall in.
well, I hope Scoob's able to reach some submarine or some boat or whatever.
No, no, he threw Scrappy at him.
Oh, okay. Well, that's fine. At least, um, some are not too big of fans of that creature. Oh, at least referring to the size, that animal weighed over 15 to 20 tons. It was possibly even larger. So it could have likely, like, let's say if you stuck it in the late Cretaceous period with different species of Mosasaurus, but the larger species, it still might have a bit of a problem with, but it could likely take on most of those large marine reptiles. So, back to the seal. Until now, we thought that all true seals originated in the northern hemisphere and then across the equator just once or twice during their entire evolutionary history. Instead, many of them appear to have evolved in the southern Pacific and then crisscrossed the equator up to 8 times. Huh, interesting. I wonder what fossils are showing up there with the earlier seals. Then we have a few bones. Guessing these are part of the vertebrae? No, it's not being specific. Eomanicus belegarensis. The Rule and his colleagues from New Zealand, Australia, and the United States examined 7 well-preserved specimens of Eomanicus belegarensis, including a complete skull found by local fossil hunters on South Taranaki beaches in New Zealand between 2009 and 2016. So this discovery was a triumph for citizen science, said co-author Dr. Felix Marks, a curator of marine mammals at the Museum of New Zealand Te Papa Tongarewa and a researcher in the Department of Geology at the University of Otago.
Italilu says hi.
Well, welcome aboard, Theropod. Yeah, So we're going over some leopard seal like prehistoric monk seal that was discovered from the Pliocene around 3 million years ago. Okay, so I guess somebody else to bring up is the Sivetherium. This is a land based animal. Sivatherium. This is an early predecessor to modern day giraffes. Yet it doesn't have necessarily a very similar structure to any of the species of today. There are around 5 different species of giraffes currently living over in Africa. That is also including the okapi, which lives in different rainforest areas of the Congo and Uganda. This is how distinct this animal is. Extremely large ossicones on the top of his head, which are those two horn like structures. But they would likely be covered in a very dense layer of tissue and keratin. This could be just a different reconstruction of a Cyvatherium. It's giving him a more okapi sort of a look. It's not a very tall giraffe. It does dwarf the okapi, at least, well, technically in overall size.
Junior 52 162 said, "Hi."
Oh, well, welcome aboard, Siamosaurus. It's a species of theropod from the Jurassic. We're going over some prehistoric giraffes from about 4 million years ago in Africa, along with the prehistoric seals 3 million years ago. Whoa. Okay, that's definitely, well, the animal still, this giraffe could reach somewhere around 10 feet in height or pushing about 3 meters. Yet it still was probably slightly heavier than today's giraffes, but you're also, it's also, um, making it up for it. It's like when it comes to simply like the height of giraffes today, which are around 18 feet with large bulls, or pushing like around 5.6 meters, and they can reach in some instances around 2 tons, especially with the Maasai giraffe species over in Kenya and Tanzania. The other species over in like different parts of West Africa, it's like South Africa and Botswana, and even adjacent to I think Angola, or no, it's I think it's slightly adjacent to the Maasai species. Might be the Ethiopian giraffe. They're slightly smaller. But focusing on Cyvatherium, so this animal likely would have coexisted with one of the only species of also bears to have existed over in Africa, being the Agriotherium. So that was a species of bear that was slightly larger than today's polar bears, but it had much longer limbs compared to its body size. Still probably weighing in around 2,200 pounds or pushing a little over 1,100 kilograms. But Cyvatherium was an herbivore, so it was likely feeding on different species of Pliocene acacia trees, closely related to the acacia trees that giraffes feed on today in different parts of East Africa, for instance.
What's with this guy's face?
Yeah, he looks like cheerful, um, kind of wise, possibly. But I will say they made his ossicones extremely furry. He seems to have actually existed until possibly somewhere around maybe a couple 100,000 years ago. So the short-necked giraffes were actually existing over in Africa throughout much of the Pleistocene as well, but really renowned for the Pliocene and earlier into the Miocene epoch. So over 8 million years ago in some instances. Cyvatherium. Okay, whoa. Did we find a species or a specimen of Cyvatherium feeding on or evidence of it feeding on meat? I mean, here's the thing. If you look at different, well, I'm thinking of parasitactyls, but actually, no, even if you're looking at deer. So different species of ungulates, which are the two-toed herbivores of today, that include the different species of bovids like bison, buffalo, oryx or cows, as well as giraffes. Who else? Deer, camels. So they're all part of the separate lineage of mammals, being the artiodactyls, whereas rhinos, um, who else? Tapirs and horses belong to the perissodactyl lineage of mammals. But let's see. I think it's the 2 and 5 toed animals that belong to the artiodactyl lineage. And no, that has nothing to do with pterodactyl, which is a pterosaur from the late Jurassic of Germany around 150 or around 160 million years ago, despite the ending of its name. But yeah, I'm shocked by this because this animal is usually seen as just a peaceful herbivore. It's not that it wasn't capable of defending itself. You did already have different species of cats during this time, like different species of Pliocene cheetahs, even earlier relatives of lions. And African lions, like Panthera leo specifically, would evolve during the Ice Age. Let's see. Yeah, this is shocking. That was a sloth for a second. Okay, well, let's head back to the article. So, this new species has been discovered thanks to, referring to the seal, to numerous exceptionally well preserved fossils, all of which were found by members of the public. Our results suggest that true seals crossed the equator over 8 times in their history. Oh, I mean, I guess that is a major accomplishment. Overall, they more than double the age of the north south dichotomy characterizing living true seals and confirms a surprisingly recent major change in southern true seal diversity. So, referring to probably the Antarctic Ocean as well, but the southern Pacific, southern Atlantic, and the southern Indian Ocean. If you're looking at like larger species of seals today, like the northern elephant seals, they can extend into certain areas of northern California, possibly Oregon, but usually like the stellar sea lions that can reach somewhere around 1,500 to 2,000 pounds or a little over 700 to 900 kilograms that extend all the way to the coast of Southeast Alaska and the coast of British Columbia. So they can be coexisting with brown bears and definitely coastal black bears in some instances. Coastal wolves too. Okay, well this was interesting. Let's head forward to another part of the Cenozoic era. So from SmithsonianMag.com, prehistoric hyena's teeth show bone-crushing carnivore roam the Arctic. Like the only hyena to live in North America, Chasma porthetus, had the stature of a wolf and the powerful jaws of its modern relatives. Huh. Yeah, that's quite a different sort of a build compared to hyenas in general, especially if you're looking at Crocuta, the other genus of hyena, especially the cave hyena. Well, technically, Crocuta is a spotted hyena of today, but there was also Crocuta, the cave hyena subspecies, which was much larger than the modern spotted hyena of today.
Well, somebody put some effort into naming that, didn't they?
Yeah, I'm trying to remember who specifically it was. Maybe it was George Cuvier, the French paleontologist that helped push paleontology. Let's see. Um, yeah, but basically, it was the Kodiak brown bear of spotted hyenas because Kodiak's the largest subspecies of brown bear today. And Kamchatka brown bear over in Russia is like, hey, I'm here too. He just outweighs him by a couple 100 pounds. Okay, so I mean, this is a very interesting illustration of this hyena. It is, I mean, now the wolf description does make sense. It does have, especially looking at the individual on the carcass, it does have a bit more of like a wolf-like stature. Like even its legs look a little leaner, like a bit less like a hyena. But the one on the ground seems to have much more pronounced shoulders and even the back hind limbs more similar to a hyena. So I'm guessing because it didn't mention where in North America, this is probably taking place over in some part of Alaska or North America because the mammoth in the distance is possibly a um not a southern mammoth, a steppe mammoth, close relative, the woolly mammoth, larger too. Over a million years ago, among the chilly grasslands, that's funny, of the ancient Yukon, it's not that it isn't true, but this is the way it was stated. Canada's most northwesterly territory, an unexpected beast roamed a hyena, more lupine in appearance than its modern relatives, but still adept at crushing bones with its powerful jaws. This running hyena was the only species of its family to venture out of Eurasia and spread to the Americas. Paleontologists know the prehistoric carnivore as Chasma porthetus. So the first Chasma porthetus fossils were named nearly a century ago from the vicinity of the Grand Canyon. Oh, whoa. Okay, never mind. This individual. Oh, this is the hyena that we find further south in different areas like California, Oregon, Texas. It wasn't hitting me. I think sometimes more focus is put onto like the species that inhabited Asia, Europe, technically Africa too. And you know the hyena is over in North America, but you forget that's a different genus. So the ancient hyena's scientific name roughly translates to the hyena who saw the canyon. Since that initial discovery, additional fossils have turned up from California to Florida, from northern Mexico to Kansas, and additional species have been unearthed in Africa and Eurasia. Oh, wait a second. So this specific genus, it seems, also has been found like Crocuta over in the other continents, not Australia and South America. However, seems to be that there might have been hyenas over in northern Mexico, but considering you do have a wide variety of ice age animals existed in the um, in the United States, also inhabiting Mexico, except it was too warm for animals like cave lions or woolly mammoths. But there was always a missing piece to the puzzle. Paleontologists found Chasmathoides fossils in Eurasia, and the ancient predator clearly ranged widely through southern North America. But the fossils bridging the gap in a place called Beringia, where Siberia and Alaska were once joined by a land bridge, were seemingly nowhere to be found. A newly analyzed pair of teeth is helping to fill in part of that story. Okay, let's bring in an herbivore it might have fed on. Bison priscus. So Bison, and then separate word Priscus. So basically, this was a much larger, not just overall in size, but even when it comes to the horns, a version of the prairie bison of the American prairie bison of today. However, it's not the same species. You also have it where, like the wood bison and prairie bison of today, they are genetically distinct from each other, but they're just separate subspecies. Not they both belong to bison. But the steppe bison was, roaming a vast area, well, much of North America and even over into Eurasia. So I believe this might be a preserved specimen from the permafrost, possibly over in the Yukon, but maybe it was over in Russia.
It was in Siberia.
Oh, okay, so it was over in central Russia. I Maybe I'm thinking of another species of bison in general because it is interesting. I mean, we have found a handful of different preserves by bison mummies from the permafrost.
Wait a minute. Do I have the correct one?
Yeah, this is likely him. I just haven't seen this kind of an illustration. Somebody really elongated like the length of probably it's just some prairie bison of today and added more of like horns from possibly another species of bison or just possibly oryx or more ancient cows, which were around during the Ice Age as well. But looking at Bison priscus, it wasn't the only species of bison to have inhabited North America or even Eurasia itself. There was also Bison latrifons, but it had one of the more pronounced horns. So it was having to fend off like different species of saber-toothed cats, such as Homotherium. It likely coexisted with different species of mammoths, depending on where it was in the northern hemisphere.
John Doe's in the chat.
Yeah, well, welcome back, Theropod. And it was also likely feeding on different species of more nutritious grasses compared to the prairie bison or wood bison over in, well, wood bison are really only native to Canada and Alaska, whereas prairie bison are pretty much restricted to a fringe of southern Canada and a majority of the United States, as well as into northern Mexico. it doesn't seem that bison headed further south past Mexico. In fact, really bovids in general. Let's see who else. There also might have been instances where this animal would have had to have fight off short-faced bears, especially if you're over in different parts of coastal British Columbia, even Alaska. There was further south the Arctotis simus, or the more or sometimes talked about short-faced bear, but it was only reaching somewhere around maybe 1,500 pounds, or a little over 700 kilograms. There was a coastal short-faced bear. Well, that just looks like a regular, slightly more elongated of a horn structure. But even today, with certain younger bison males, they can look somewhat similar. They just tend to be a bit taller and not as extended. Um, Oh, but further along the coast, there was a short-faced bear, on average weighing over a ton. This is definitely a much better look. So,
What
also in
about
some cases,
longhorns?
yeah, I'm. This is bison priscus. I think it has a longer horn structure than compared to bison latrifons, or yeah, I mean, when looking at Bison priscus, it also is probably this specific species that was in some cases fighting off not just Homo ethereum further north in like Alaska, different parts of Russia, but even Smilodon over in the United States.
Akita Bear on Kick is in the chat. Hello, everyone.
Welcome back, Theropod. So let's see. Um, Yeah, I mean, when it comes to the herd structures of these animals, it's very possible that they might have been roaming in hundreds of individuals, possibly less than bison of today, considering during the Ice Age, you also had just simply many more species. Even if you look at the different herds that possibly were occurring, like during the 1600s over in the United States, which is sometimes over exaggerated, it's likely that there weren't 60 million bison roaming North America because they're having to coexist and also compete for food in many instances with millions of elk. And then you also have moose on top of that, pronghorn, mule deer, white-tailed deer, even bears in some instances because they will also eat certain types of grasses. That seems to be a bit too much for at one time. Like, even the prairies couldn't sustain that. But yeah, this is a good preservation of a bison priscus skull. It is similar to modern bison in some ways, especially if you're looking at it from the sides. Very large eye sockets. That's very noticeable in a wide range. I'd say all species of bovids. You're looking at oryx or Indian gar over in South Asia or India specifically, and the Batang cattle. You can find them in Thailand too.
John Doe says, I believe NBC has a show called Surviving Earth from the producers of Walking with Dinosaurs. I'm
Um,
not just sure because I haven't seen it myself.
yeah, um Yeah, I've heard about that. Fortunately, the writer is well, okay. Tim Haynes, who he directed Walking with Dinosaurs, but he also wrote Walking with Dinosaurs. He's not writing Surviving Earth. Also, at least just looking at the what is it? It seems to be that it's one of those documentaries kind of that we tend to get sometimes. At least it was common during the 2010s where just simply the CGI amount seems to be kind of short or brief, but it also seems to be quite random and heading from one period to another. I mean, it could still possibly be a good documentary. I just find those to not be as um just watchful or entertaining because for some reason I just like it when it kind of goes in order, or it's fine if it goes from what is it? I guess maybe the Ice Age and then gradually backwards. I think one of the only documentaries of ice that I've seen where it was a bit random, but it still had a bit of a slower pace to it was the Sea Monster Adventures with Nigel Marvin because it was like staying in a specific region for a period of time, but you're also just focusing on the ocean and seeing the animals also for an extended period and just gradually moving back and forth. The problem is in more recent documentaries, that was also back in what, or came out in 2003, 2004. Um, they just tend to be quite quick and too rapid with documentaries. But
What was
um,
Walking with Dinosaurs 2 versus 1? What's your opinion on that?
Oh, well, yeah. Walking with Dinosaurs 2 was I definitely wouldn't call it a sequel. That was its own thing. It was far too redundant, slow. Also, even the narration was not good. Um, there's not really anything I can compliment.
John Doe said
Paleontologists didn't even seem to want to be there either.
John Doe said, "As long as it's not a mockumentary, I'll watch it."
Yeah, I guess something like there was also, I guess this might have been late early 2000s, but something like Prehistoric Predators, which would continue to reuse the same little brief seconds of CGI footage of like the saber-toothed cats, the short-faced bear, or like dire wolves hunting a bison just over and over. And you were hoping for at least something continuous. Show like through 2 or 3 seconds of an American lion. Um, let's see, what's another thing? Oh, those. Okay. Okay, yeah, it wasn't hitting me what you meant by, mockumentary. Trying to think of ones that were like that. I mean, besides, like, certain instances where they're trying to find a dinosaur in the Congo, like some sauropod, or, um, something like some large crocodile, like even possibly something like Sarcosuchus or Dinosuchus existing somewhere. Megalodon itself too. I think yeah, there was something like even recently about it possibly existing off the coast of Australia somewhere. I'm trying to think of certain other prehistoric animals. I guess it's similar to like those certain short videos you might pop upon where it's like there's supposedly camera footage of a Gallimimus running past, or oh, there's that one that's actually a bit intriguing. There's this blurry footage of supposedly a woolly mammoth crossing some river over in rural Russia somewhere. And that's probably one of the few where it's like, well, you kind of wonder, but very likely you're looking at the habitat around. Woolly mammoths did not want to be in a densely forested area. It would be for a very short amount of time because there's really nothing for them to eat. So, yeah, that likely wasn't authentic, and nobody has seen this mammoth. But yeah, it was just the blurry footage, just slowly walking in the river, kind of made a bit believable. Okay, let's head back to the hyena. So, a team of paleontologists led by researchers from the University at Buffalo described the fossils today in the journal Open Quaternary. Quaternary refers to like 1.8 million years ago to about 11,000 years ago. So it's only like I'd say maybe 60 to 65% of the Pleistocene or the Ice Age in general. So the teeth were collected back in the 1970s, found in the Yukon's Old Crow Basin, a place that has yielded over 50,000 vertebrate fossils representing more than 80 species. Wow, I am familiar with the Old Crow Basin over in the Yukon, but I didn't realize that we had found this many animals in the region. Even though the hyena teeth were known in certain paleontology circles, no formal study had ever been published. Whispers of Arctic hyenas cued, piked the curiosity of University at Buffalo paleontologist Jack Cheng, over years of discussions with co-authors Lars Wardellen and Grant Zazula, eventually tracked down the teeth and positively identified them. This was a classic paleo collection detective work involving a network of collaborators and collection managers. Okay, I guess let's bring up the southern mammoth. This is definitely not as furry of a species compared to what you would see, especially on species like the woolly mammoth or even the steppe mammoth. Steppe mammoth also, in some cases, is shown having slightly less fur compared to the woolly mammoth, but also like a completely different build in general. It is interesting. It's like the southern mammoth in some instances. It's almost like the Colombian mammoth in some cases of Central Asia and possibly somewhere in Europe. But this animal has been found in different parts of Pakistan, Turkey, I believe even Afghanistan, possibly even southern Russia. But it didn't really contain much fur. It seems it was, if it was anything, it would be like something similar to the Columbian mammoth, considering the Columbian mammoth over in the United States would have likely contained a light layer of fur. So if there was like a dense area, it would probably be along the top of the head and along the upper part of the back as well.
It's funny because when you said that, I pulled
Oh yeah, he
that.
popped up. Yeah, it's probably Columbian mammoth, considering it's ground sloth in the background. I don't think there's evidence for the southern mammoth ever entering North America, so it simply seems to have stayed for the most part in different areas of Asia. Also, not really inhabiting even the colder mammoth steppe region further north into different areas of Mongolia, Russia, northern China, possibly like even north of Armenia, Georgia, Azerbaijan. The southern mammoth was also still weighing probably around 6 tons, so about the size of like a very large male Asian elephant of today, or like average African bush elephants. Definitely dwarfing like the African forest elephants over in Angola, Nigeria, different parts of the Congo. But the southern mammoth would still have to be concerned about different species of predators, such as the Homotherium, certain species of bears, at least with also younger individuals. It's likely. Oh, also depending on when it went extinct, I am wondering maybe cave lions in some instances or Panthera spilea. But the southern mammoth was also one of the earlier species of mammoths to exist. It likely was already had already evolved back in the Pliocene around 3 million years ago. So also living at the same time as some of the earlier shorter species of giraffes over in Africa, the Agrotherium bear, and like the different species of earlier seals that we were seeing, as well as possibly like some of the last individuals of megalodon and the giant toothed whales. But since it also was a mammoth, it's very likely that this animal was simply a grazer and not going over to different species of trees to feed. Its teeth were simply not meant for slicing tougher leaf material in that case, even though in many cases grasses can actually be tougher to chew compared to or even digest than leaves. But in some cases, they're also not as toxic. So let's see what they found. I'm guessing it's going to be part of possibly like the jawbone or some teeth in this instance. Yep, it's a tooth or a couple of teeth. Yeah, they've got it marked. So it was found in 1977, I think. Huh. Yeah. Um, tucked away for the Ice Age fossil tooth, tucked away for years in the collections of the Canadian Museum of Nature, belonged to the running hyena, Chasma porthetus. According to a new university at Buffalo led study, this tooth found in 1977 and one other are the first known hyena fossils found in the Arctic. That's interesting. I really thought we already found certain remnants of hyena, especially like even the cave hyena further north. Maybe I'm just thinking of certain parts of Central Europe and certain areas of like maybe even central Russia and not further north towards the Arctic because you have to be, I guess, pretty far north for that to occur. What emerges is a view of the Ice Age that's a bit different than typical visions of woolly mammoths and Smilodon. Well, okay, the furthest north we have found Smilodon, specifically Smilodon fatalis, is around southern Alberta, Canada. So not anywhere near the Arctic or saber-toothed cats. Even though, well, technically Homotherium is a saber-toothed cat. And the saber-toothed cats belong to a family of mammals called the Machaerodontids, which is what Smilodon is a part of. Even though artistic depictions and museum displays sometimes depict many different Ice Age species together, Chasma porthetus arrived in the Yukon during a very specific slice of time that would look a bit less familiar to us. There were no bison, likely no lions, no gray wolves, no musk oxen, no Sega antelope. That sounds a little far fetched. Maybe at certain points, but no bison, lions. Any of these, okay, Saiga, antelope, possibly they didn't exist there, but the other four, that's a little far fetched. Says Sazula, a paleontologist at Simon Fraser University. All those animals arrived in North America later. Wait a second. How old is this creature again? Just checking real quick. No. Hmm. Maybe he was just very early on into the Ice Age, and if that is the case, then that would make sense. But if this is like past, a couple 100,000 years, that wouldn't be the case. Instead, the hyena was neighbors with giant camels, horses, caribou, and steppe mammoths, a different species in the more familiar woolly mammoth sort. Let's see. And despite the moniker Ice Age, the time of Chasmoporthetis was on the green side. There were probably a few stunted spruce trees with swaths of steppe tundra grasslands with shrub birch and willows. So these are two different types of trees. Um, well, the interesting thing is reindeer have only been around for maybe 700,000 years, and this is technically towards the later part of the Pleistocene or the Ice Age. Steppe mammoths were definitely already occurring 2 million years ago. Giant camels, if you're referring to giant species or genre like camelops, titanolops, they were possibly also around during the early Ice Age. It mentions muskox. No, did it? No, they weren't there. Horses. It depends on the species. I mean, there was a large species of horse that even dwarfed the larger breeds of horse that we have today, but I don't know specifically when it first evolved. It was definitely around like in the past couple 100,000 years. So, nevertheless, the high latitude of the ancient Yukon still brought protracted chills and short summers, meaning the hyenas had to have been effective predators in the long, dark, cold Arctic winters. I really do wonder how far their range was. I mean, considering it's an entirely different genus, I would assume they would extend further south into like different parts of Alaska, the Yukon in this case, for more food sources, since it would probably be almost non existent the further north you would be during certain parts of the Ice Age. Oh, yeah. Okay. Let's bring up Mylodon. Mylodon.
He was a carnivore?
Um, there seems to really only be evidence, or at least with the larger species, or possibly the largest species of sloth, giant ground sloth, the Megatherium. But this belongs to a completely different family of giant ground sloths. Megatherium is a part of Megatheridae. Mylodon is, I believe, a part of Mylodonti, and it lived over in South America. We have found it in different regions of Argentina and Brazil, dating to over 300,000 years ago. And this creature was a medium sized species of sloth, definitely on the larger spectrum, but still probably weighing in at somewhere around 2 to 3 tons and feeding on a large range of different species of trees. It doesn't seem to have been really a grass eater. Looking at its dental structure, it's a bit slightly more similar to even different species of mastodons in some instances, or the distant relatives of the mammoths. They're technically not very closely related to each other. But Mylodon also likely, like most of the ground sloths, did not really have the ability to run. And as you can see, it does walk on the sides of its toes, just like the different species of tree sloths do today. Now, what is interesting is that they're depicting this animal as being extremely furry, which is not surprising for giant ground sloth depictions, and it certainly is possible they just simply might not have had as necessarily like a very thick coat, but in some instances they might have not have had fur at all, depending on the species. Well, a very light amount. Okay, that's interesting. Usually, when it comes to preserved dung, giant ground sloths are really found in different parts of Arizona, maybe even Utah. placed in different caves, like along the Grand Canyon, for instance.
This was found in Chile.
Okay, well, apparently we seem to have evidence. I didn't know this of giant ground sloth dung or preserved dung over in different parts of South America, at least over in the West Coast, which is where Chile is, adjacent to the Pacific. So that's actually quite fascinating. Also, meaning that the animal was inhabiting Ice Age Chile ecosystems as well.
It doesn't say how big it is.
Um, oh, well, I would assume it wouldn't be too small. I mean, I would assume like larger than a cow patty in some instances. However, it is feeding on different plant material. Um, hmm. Yeah, that's an interesting question. I'm also assuming that this animal is probably having to feed on around 150 pounds or more of leaves each day.
John Doe just asks, how can you tell the difference between mastodon, mammoth, and other prehistoric elephants?
Well, if you're looking at
Well, the mastodon and mammoth is easy, isn't it?
well, it's definitely actually, I'd say that they might be a little more challenging to differentiate to the average person compared to certain earlier ancestors of both the mammoths and the mastodons, like Moratherium, for instance, which is a small species of proboscidean or, in quote, elephant from the Eocene, like a little over 35 million years ago. It's only like a fraction of the size of elephants, too. It's probably not weighing much more than 200 pounds or a little over 90 kilograms. It's a very short trunk, even compared to its body size or its body length. Smaller tusks as well, but it's only about maybe 3 to 4 feet in height or pushing like 1.2 meters at most. So, mammoths and mastodons, when you're looking at mastodons, mastodons tend to have like a shorter, they do have a shorter stature. They're not really reaching much more than 8 feet in height or pushing a little over 2.4 meters. And what is it? They also extended much further south compared to the mammoths. So, Asia, they didn't really inhabit much of that continent. They don't seem to have stepped into Europe or even, well, okay, Africa. I might have to be careful with that, but at least like close relatives did, like the Platypledon, for example. But that's the shovel-tusked proboscideans.
But he's saying, how can you tell the difference between them?
Actually, let's bring up like a woolly mammoth and mastodon comparison. Mammoths are much taller compared to mastodon. They also tend to have that heightened round sort of a dome on the top of their skull. Mastodons, it's a bit flatter, almost like modern day elephants to an extent. Mastodons also have a much longer body length overall. Their tusks are also slightly shorter. Mammoths tend to have somewhat more curved tusks depending on the species. Let's see. Mastodons also looking at their teeth. Mastodons have very rigid tooth structures, whereas um, the mammoths have these several lines, and they're almost like flat. Just when looking at like the tooth height, like especially the crown of the tooth itself. So that indicates that that animal was feeding on different species of grasses, whereas a very rigid tooth structure of the mastodons indicates that it was feeding on different species of leaves. So this is looking at the left. That is a mastodon tooth or part of the jaw, not necessarily one tooth. And this is part of the jaw of a mammoth. Could be a woolly or a Colombian mammoth. I'm not entirely sure, but that's definitely a very
The
distinct.
little one's the mastodon?
Yes. But those are immense. Some of the largest leaf teeth or leaf teeth meant for chewing on leaves for really any species of mammal to exist. Mastodons also did not reach the weight of woolly mammoths. They could still approach like around 10 tons, but that was the upper limit. Let's see. Yeah, it's that simply like mastodons, they're a bit even when it comes to their overall body length. There's not really much of an increase in size. Oh yeah. As you can see, like with the individual on the right. And I would say, I mean, guessing the ear size, that's not really a great way to distinguish them. But we also don't really have any preserved ears from mastodons, I believe. We might from certain woolly mammoths, mummies.
What about
But
other prehistoric?
actually, let's bring up the Moratherium, because he's one of the smaller relatives. Moetherium. Yeah, mammoths have definitely like an increased sort of a stature as you travel from the rear, their hind legs, to their shoulder blades or the top of their skull.
Really? This guy?
This is technically just an older species of elephant or an earlier proboscidean. So he was inhabiting different parts of Asia back, actually, possibly even northern Africa. I believe certain parts of Egypt back in the late Eocene epoch. And he's a very small species of herbivore. You could likely keep this animal as a pet. He would be like a different version of the tapir of today, despite being quite distantly related. Yep, that's practically him. That's not a bad reconstruction either, despite it looking like it possibly was painted back in the 1970s or 1980s. Um, yeah, I think in many instances, this animal seems to be portrayed as being semi aquatic. It did live amongst different marshes and wetlands in the area of Egypt that it inhabited, but also possibly went swimming, maybe even diving for seaweed, possibly, or certain
It's
types of
funny that
kelp
you just said that.
in Mediterranean. Well, there was no the Tethys Sea back then. Well, I mean, it's not a terrible reconstruction of him.
It's not that, it's that you just said it, and I pulled it right when you said it.
Oh, you mean he might be eating seaweed? It seems to be maybe just some other species of freshwater aquatic vegetation, but I mean, it could be seaweed. He looks very cheerful. Yeah, definitely. This guy would be a great pet.
You want another one?
Yeah, I guess we could bring up like Platypelodon. Oh, no, no, no. Well, I was thinking him or Dinotherium, but yeah, we can bring up Platypelodon. PlatyBelodon. Mastodons also don't seem to have contained as much fat, at least compared to species like the woolly mammoth or the steppe mammoth. This is the Platypelodon from Africa. And this animal has been found in different parts of Tanzania, Ethiopia from about 3 to 5 million years ago during the Pliocene epoch. And despite like these reconstructions, it's very possible that this animal might have had a bit more of an more modern elephant like trunk compared to what's showing here. But still in those um in different modern reconstructions, it's like their trunk almost would have been used as a bit of like an upper, um, like gum sort of a jaw to an extent. At least when just well, what I'm trying to say is that it would have helped simply shield and protect the bottom jaw, or at least the tongue area.
Nikita Baron Kick said it resembled a hippo.
Sort of. It does seem that
Not this guy, the other one, gotta be behind.
yeah, pygmy hippo specifically. Yeah, those little guys from different parts of the Congo, which don't usually reach much more than maybe 600 pounds or a little over 270 kilograms. But still Platypelodon. I mean, there is evidence for different types of wetlands and marshes occurring over in East Africa. So it was a much wetter region compared to what you see today. So like for instance, the Serengeti. But back then, in many instances, this might be one of those reconstructions where it gives the trunk a little more dexterity. Oh yeah, this isn't bad. Okay, so it's like they just simply make the trunk go also yeah, a bit more nimble. So it's likely that this animal might have used its bottom jaw, or at least the tusks in that region, to help scoop up aquatic plant material, maybe even rub off a sheer amount of bark from different species of trees. And there are certain theories that, at least when their calves were first born, they might have used it to carry their young or pie. Um,
That was too funny, I had to bring it up.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely is a theory. Yeah, this is interesting. I would be concerned though about the sugar intake because he probably would collapse from that. Though it is very likely this animal would now and then have fed on different species of fruits back then. I'm just not sure about blueberries. Let's see. I think that was blueberry pie. Yeah, this isn't a bad reconstruction of the animal. It might have a bit too much of an Asian elephant sort of an appearance, but the bottom jaw looks okay.
Okay, was there anything else you wanted?
Oh, that's what it is. Though I don't think this is a drawing, but it could be. Um, it has it where like the at least the gum region stops further back, but I would assume it would be towards like the end of the or the front of the tongue at least. Okay, let's head back to the hyena.
Wasn't there something else you wanted?
Oh, um,
You said another one.
oh, like another elephant. Dinotherium or pro dino. Let's just bring up Dinotherium. Deinotherum. This is a much larger species of proboscidean that lived in the region close to the same time. Likely, Platypelodon did not compete with it for food. And Platypelodon wasn't necessarily small, it still probably weighed 4 to 5 tons. But Dinotherium was immense, in some cases, much larger than possibly any of the mammoth species. You might have had like the steppe mammoth approach it in overall weight, and it was possibly also close to the same height, but Dinotherium might have been taller. This is possibly the tallest species of proboscidean or elephant to exist. So this animal possibly reached in some cases 16 to 17 feet in height, nearly the height of a giraffe, and like a modern day giraffe specifically. Oh yeah, this is a good reconstruction. I think in many cases you have it where this animal is portrayed as this very aggressive creature, which is probably accurate, especially if you're referring to the time when this elephant's going through must, much like bush elephants, forest elephants, or Indian elephants of today, certain parts of the year. It also extends for a longer period during the wet season than during the dry season. It's very sparse when it occurs, when there's not much rain occurring. Oh, well, this seems to be a little cheerful guy. Dinotherium also would have had, instead of shovel tusks or even like the tusks of the four tusked elephant Gomphotheres, in some cases, um, this animal had tusks that would have pointed towards the ground and not even straight forward in some cases, like even a bit diagonal, like towards its own rear. It's a bit of a mystery as to what those tusks would have been used for. And oh yeah, that's another good illustration. Also, in some cases, seems to be that Dinotherium might or is reconstructed with slightly longer ears compared to its body size, and other earlier proboscideans and modern day elephants have some of the largest ones. But besides that, not the tongue, the trunk in some cases, at least in more recent reconstructions, I think it's gone back and forth. However, has been shown as being much longer. Yeah, this is one of those reconstructions where it's shown as being very small, but it's very possible or even likely that it would have been much longer because it's a bit challenging to grab much with this short of a trunk. But I mean, you have where it appears. Don't have too much trouble, but they're also a much smaller animal. Oh yeah, I didn't mention the weight of this behemoth. This animal probably weighed in at somewhere around 15 to 17 tons in some cases.
Wow.
You did not want to run into this creature when it's in must, because here's the thing, despite size, it can still technically run. So you're having to outpace something this size. And yeah, I mean, maybe it's only running at 10 to 15 miles per hour or what, 25 kilometers or so. But for a sustained distance,
John Doe does say it is interesting that the tusks grow backwards.
yeah, it's very odd. I mean, it's a huge mystery as to what they would be used for. This is also one of those illustrations where it's shown having a much larger trunk. But at full size, there really weren't any predators that wanted to deal with, especially a full-grown bull Dinotherium. So,
All it'd have to do is bring its head down on you
yeah,
and stab you.
it really does make you wonder also how strong the trunks were of these animals, considering elephants today, at least with Asian elephants, they can't really lift much more than 1,000 pounds at once. Now, possibly if you trained its trunk, maybe it's very likely you could increase the amount of weight. But I would assume it would be at least maybe around a ton when it comes to this animal and how much it could lift. It also lived in more of an open savanna, kind of like with what you see in certain acacia tree landscapes of today, but with much more nutritious species of plants it's feeding on. Now, I think looking at the tooth structure, it's possible this animal might have had a bit more of a mixed diet like today's elephants. Yeah, I think that's just a good reconstruction of the adult, or at least a life size model. So that was also about like 4 million years ago over in Africa.
Oh, they were around that long ago.
Yeah, so they went extinct before different species of mammoths would evolve. Well, possibly you might have had it where like the Romanian mammoth might have already existed, which was pushing around like 3.2 million years ago.
Wait, what's it called?
The Romanian mammoth.
So not Romanian, but Romanian. Huh.
I think so. Like Mammothus romanus.
I didn't realize they had all this.
He's vegan on macrocanid. It's one of the species of herbivores inhabited Ice Age South America, not really extending into North America for some reason. So from the back to the hyena, from the fragmentary fossil record of the beast, paleontologists see North America's only hyena as more wolf-like than its modern spotted cousin. Based on what we know about the skull and limb skeleton of Chasmoporthetus in other fossil localities, we think this hyena was longer legged with a much less sloped back. Probably did not live in groups as large as living spotted hyenas do. Yeah, you can have clans of spotted hyenas reaching like around 35 individuals. They can be massive. The two teeth aren't the oldest Chasmoporthetus fossils in North America, Sang says, as the oldest finds are about 5 million years old. Whoa. Wow. Yeah, he's been around for some time. Even Crocuta has been around for, I think, since at least the late Pliocene. But this is definitely towards the very beginning of the Pliocene epoch. The Pliocene was like 5 to 2.52 million years ago. It is interesting. It's like the Pleistocene kind of starts at around, at least when you're referring to, just the numbers 2.52 million years ago. And the Permian period started or ended around 252 million years ago, or the start of the Triassic. It's interesting. So where was I? Oh, so they not only demonstrate that the hyena ranged over much of North America for millions of years, but they also were found right where paleontologists expected them to pop up. I also think the reason why, and it makes sense, as to this hyena likely not living in large groups is because food's going to be much harder to come by. I mean, it's not that it isn't sometimes over in different parts of Africa as well, especially during the dry season. But, over in, let's say, Greenland today or the northern Canadian Arctic islands, you don't really see large packs of Arctic wolves, for instance. You can have it as you venture further south into different parts of Alaska or possibly even the Nunavut territories or the Yukon, and wolf packs become much larger, also a separate subspecies. But it makes sense for an ecosystem that really only has muskox, occasionally certain reindeer, and snowshoe hares running around. So the Arctic fossils cut that distance gap along the speculated dispersal route right down the middle, putting a dot on the map where hyena paleontologists predicted Chasmoporthetus should have traveled. How Chasmoporthetus fits into North America's ancient ecology is still somewhat hazy. Like other hyenas, this ancient species had bone crushing jaws that would have allowed it to bust carcasses into splinters. Well, I think that can be exaggerated to an extent. Spotted hyenas today, depending on the female, also has to have healthy teeth to uh, to do this. Can chomp through gradually a femur bone of a giraffe, or at least the thigh bone. But certain bones they still can't crunch through. And also, the question is, even with this specific genus, were the social dynamics very similar to today's spotted hyenas? Because it's not the same in spotted hyenas as you see with striped hyenas or the little aard wolf over in northern Africa and parts of Western Asia, actually even possibly into Central Asia as well. Small species of hyena. and the brown hyena. They don't live in clans, and the males are larger than the females in those species. But for some reason, the spotted hyena decided to become, um, at least have a social dynamic, but the females are on top and the males are they are at the bottom of the pecking order, but they also quickly wear down their teeth because of that. They're really only feeding on, or at least part of their diet is just bone marrow. They're having to crack through all those bones. And that in turn makes their teeth quite weathered down or worn down. They don't live for very long. Let's see. That doesn't mean chomping on bones was all the hyena did. I think because hyenas are bone crackers, people tend to associate them with scavenging. I would say that tends to be with like male hyenas. Des Moines University paleontologist Julie Macon says, but the modern spotted hyena is a fierce predator, gives lions a challenge. While it's unlikely that Porthetus lived in large social groups, as suggested by their sparse distribution in the fossil record, Meakin says that the carnivore was more than capable of hunting live prey. I think here's just a viewpoint of the Yukon somewhere. Oh, the Old Crow River Range, Wet'suwet'en First Nation in Yukon Territory in Canada is known for its rich deposits of fossils. The ancient hyena teeth are among tens of thousands of fossils recovered from the region in the last century. So when Cassioporthetus arrived in North America in the Pliocene, so it's probably around 3 million years ago. Oh no, 5 million years ago, it mentioned. Many of the other classic Pleistocene carnivores were not yet present. Okay, this makes sense. There definitely wouldn't be any reindeer in the region. Woolly mammoths haven't evolved yet. Steppe mammoth hasn't evolved, but likely the southern mammoth. Well, okay, if we're talking about 5 million years ago, none of the mammoths have occurred. Gray wolves and lions wouldn't arrive for tens of thousands of years. Okay, now this makes it seem like it's late Pliocene. So I'm a bit confused. The hyena likely lived along Kuans, relatives of today's dholes. Okay, so those are the wild dogs native to, or wild canid species native to India. And scimitar-toothed cats. Technically, Homotherium could fall on this.
You said dogs are not actually dogs?
Well, it's just that dogs can be used for like the canids, like the African painted dog over in Africa, but it's not technically a dog. Dog is a subspecies of gray wolf. Let's see. Oh, Zazula says so. The hyena might have lived during a window when there wasn't too much competition for prey. Okay, so however, Chasma Porthetus did face some competition with another bone crusher, a prehistoric dog, Borophagus. Sounds familiar. Overlapped with the hyena for about 3 million years in North America. I wonder if this is the species that was hunting different species of pronghorn at this time. Borophagus might be actually the species of not necessarily wolf, but canid that has a very dog-like appearance. At least if you're looking at something like a boxer breed, or possibly like a certain type of bulldog to an extent. So the canid might have dominated southern habitats, while Casimoporthetus, it could be him that I'm thinking of. I guess in this case, you're giving him much more wolf-like look, but still, as you can see, there's that shrunken or short-faced muzzle, almost like he's a short-faced canid. Yeah, I think this is him. This is one of those older reconstructions, more of like a boxer sort of a look. They're definitely giving him a much more primitive sort of a almost like Miocene sort of a canid. So it's possible that this genus was also inhabiting the Miocene over 7 million years ago. Well, this is another one. They're definitely okay. Now they're giving him more wolf-like look, but also like a short-faced wolf, which is possibly what you could call this animal. Looking at the teeth, that's more hyena-like. I mean, this animal could definitely compete with spotted hyenas of today. I could definitely see that.
But wait.
Uh, mm, okay. Now he just looks like a pet. Um, I mean, I would doubt you wouldn't. I mean, you could possibly train one of these things. Instead, he plays fetch. But Yeah, he would likely have also been possibly feeding on earlier species of rhinos over in North America. Definitely species of camels, horses at the time. But proboscideans, that's a bit of a mystery. Maybe in Asia at that point. Yeah, I mean the teeth. I mean, it's not that wolves of today don't necessarily have strong molars towards the back, but this is much more pronounced on the species, and even the canines and the incisors towards the front of its mouth are very pronounced. Smaller brain, though, I could say. But yeah, um, very enhanced tooth structure. Wow. Yeah, I think the hyena might have a bit of an issue with this creature. So, especially if it hunted in packs, which likely it did. Now, it's also a mystery as to whether or not Chasmoporthetus would have hunted in clans or was a solitary hunter. Because the hard wolf, brown hyena, and the striped hyena, in many instances, are solitary hunters. It's not that the spotted hyena doesn't occasionally hunt by itself, but in many instances, they work as a clan. Let's see. Okay. So the canid might have dominated southern habitats while Chasmoporthetus largely stayed north until Borophagus, whose name means gluttonous eater, went extinct. Yeah, he definitely has a skull to possibly correlate with that description. They almost certainly were competing with bone cracking dogs during their co occurrence in the fossil record. The challenging Arctic landscape may have actually been an ideal place for a predator with such abilities. In harsh environments with low abundance of prey, bone cracking was a necessary and advantageous trait to hyenas because they could gain more calories from being able to eat more of the prey. Yeah, true. I mean, there's a quite a bit they're getting from the bone marrow. Like many Ice Age mammals, paleontologists are still wrestling with the question of what exactly wiped out Chasmoporthetus. But I think something to still keep in mind is that there's only so many bones you're going to, or hyena is going to want to be chowing through. It's not that now and then that isn't necessarily bad for their teeth, but it can still heavily wear them down. So I think there's a lot more food in the region, or at least larger species of prey that they're able to feed on than compared to what we're seeing with like gray wolves, for instance. But also, cracking through a rabbit bone is not too much of a problem for them. Since Chasmoporthetus went extinct before the end Pleistocene, obviously something other than that event did the deed for them. The arrival of gray wolves in North America and the profusion of native dire wolves. Well, that was much later, and that was over in like central United States. And I know Scion, which is a dire wolf, is only about maybe 130 pounds, about the size of like large wolves of today. They're pushing around 60 kilograms. May have given the hyena some stiff competition, but what drove Chasmoporthetus to the brink is still an open question. Overall, I think this is still a mystery. The loss of this continent's bone crushing hyena was no small matter. Even though wolves can and do crunch bones, none did so to the degree of Chasmoporthetus, or the like bone crushing short faced wolf.
John Doe said, I gotta go. It was definitely a blast. See you later.
All right. Well, thanks. And I guess we'll see you later too. So the hyena played an important ecological role, breaking down large carcasses out on the plains and spreading nutrients throughout their range. That would have been in definitely much smaller quantities. I mean, you could have had it where maybe hyenas at that time, also where they were in North America, were feeding on fruit now and then. Especially, they're coming upon different species of berries, most likely, like different bears or even maybe mammoths or wolves in the region. So it's possibly they were probably being omnivorous at times. Wolves are very omnivorous. The loss of these carnivores and the lack of a suitable successor changed the nature of North America. The continent just isn't the same without hyenas. That's funny. Um. Okay. Wow. Well, there was definitely something we got out of this hyena. Okay, let's head to more the modern Cenozoic era. So from the Times of India.indiatimes.com. In 1979, about 30 mongooses were released on Japan's Amami Oshima to control Hebu snakes Their population later grew to roughly 10,000. Whoa! Whoa, oh gosh. That's concerning and threatened rare wildlife. But after decades of trapping, Japan declared them eradicated in 2024. Uh, okay. Um, that was kind of unexpected. I thought maybe they would still be alive. Um, is just
That's a terrible picture.
yeah, that too. But I'm like, is doesn't seem that exciting now because they're dead. I think. Now you can have it where somewhere might declare some animal extinct and there's still a handful running around. So Japan has officially declared the successful eradication of the invasive small Indian mongoose on Amami Oshima, ending a decades-long ecological crisis on the UNESCO World Heritage listed island, according to an official announcement from Japan's Ministry of the Environment. Expert panels confirmed that the predators have been completely removed from the 712 square kilometer um what is that, like somewhere around 500 square miles in Kagoshima Prefecture after a long campaign um, for trapping, tracking, and monitoring. So, biological control plan gone wrong. The problem began. Oh, I think it might be going over what animals possibly also went extinct that were indigenous to the island. Oh, no. The problem began in 1979 when local authorities and residents released about 30 small Indian mongooses, or Urva arupunctata, on Amami Oshima. The plan was to use the animals to control the venomous habu snake, Protobothrops flaviviritis, whose bites were a danger to residents and farm workers. But the plan failed because the two species have very different habits. Habu snakes are active at night, while mongooses hunt during the day.
It's 200 almost 78 square miles.
Oh, wow. Hmm. I guess that explains the mongoose population, especially if they're social. Instead of targeting the snakes, the introduced mongooses hunted easier prey. Oh no, kind of like certain cats, including native birds, or I guess I should say Burmese pythons, small mammals, amphibians, and reptiles. Though I guess, the birds over in Australia would want a word. Many of these species had evolved on the isolated island for millions of years with few or no mammalian predators. With plenty of food and no natural competitors, the mongoose population grew quickly. Ministry of the Environment records show that by 2000, there were around 10,000 mongooses on the island, covering more than 80% of its area. Jeez. So for the uninitiated, and Oshima is a lush subtropical island in Japan's Kagoshima Prefecture, located between Kyushu and Okinawa. So it's over in southern Japan. It is the largest island in the Amami archipelago and is known for its dense forests, mangroves, coral rich coastal waters, and remarkable biodiversity. I think there's like certain small wild boars in the area and smaller deer, macaques. But let's see what else. The growing mongoose population caused major declines in several rare species found only in the Ryukyu archipelago. Its prey included the endangered Amami rabbit, Pentalagus furnesi. Interesting. I didn't know there was a species of rabbit native to at least this part of Asia. A dark furred and unusual rabbit species, unless it's maybe a hideous one that I'm thinking of, as well as the Amami woodcock, Sculopox myra, Ryukyu long-furred rat, Diplothrix ligata. So likely not very similar to the other species of rats on the mainland. And Ishikawa's frog, Odorana ishikawai. Ministry monitoring records show that sightings of Amami rabbits fell sharply near populated areas of mongoose numbers as mongoose numbers reached their peak in the late 1990s. Surviving rabbits were pushed further into remote mountain forests. Japanese government later classified the small Indian mongoose as uh, oh, it's not even native to anywhere near this area. Oh, jeez. As a specified invasive alien species. No kidding. Under national conservation laws, requiring authorities to remove it completely. Okay, either we didn't, which I find hard to believe considering it's the Indian mongoose, we didn't know that Indian mongooses really only hunt during the day or they're diurnal, which I find kind of amusing, and they decide to bring them here anyway. Well, I guess it's also around the same time that raccoons as pets were being pushed in Japan. So yeah, I guess it was just a time where it was just a bunch of mass animal ecological experiments going on in the country. So, a major eradication program began in 2000 under the Ministry of the Environment with support from Kagoshima Prefecture and local governments. In 2005, officials created a dedicated team called the Amami Mongoose Busters. So, who are you going to call? The Amami Mongoose Busters. Doo 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 doo. The team built a large network of controls across the island's dense subtropical forests, using tens of thousands of live capture traps and camera traps triggered by movement. At the height of the campaign, teams maintained as many as 30,000 traps at the same time. Wow. Rangers,
They wanted those things out.
yeah, Rangers checked them regularly, while especially trained sniffer dogs were used to search for mongoose scent. The last confirmed mongoose was captured in April 2018. Oh, that's been a while. Environmental experts that monitored the island for 6 years using automatic trail cameras, environmental DNA testing of soil and specially trained dogs. They found no signs of surviving mongooses or breeding populations, allowing officials to declare the eradication successful. So removing the invasive predator has helped native wildlife recover across Amami Oshima. Biological surveys cited in ministry control reports show that populations of Amami rabbits, Amami woodcocks, and native frogs have increased. Oh, that's good to hear. Some species have also returned to coastal lowlands and mountain valleys where they had previously disappeared. The achievement on Amami Oshima is one of the largest successful island mongoose eradication programs in the world.
But they can't get rid of the raccoons.
Raccoons, yeah. It was also an important step towards the island's recognition as an UNESCO World Natural Heritage Site in 2021. John? Yeah, it's what's so special about here? Well, I mean, we've got native rabbits, rats, and frogs, but we killed a bunch of mongooses. The mongoose massacre. You should visit here. Conservation authorities continue to operate biosecurity checks and monitor ports to prevent non native species from being accidentally brought back to the island. It's almost like New Zealand, which is also an island, but I guess kind of Japan as a whole, kind of his, at least since the Ice Age or the end of the last Ice Age around 11,000 years ago. Wow. Okay. Well, that was something with the mongooses. I kept thinking maybe like ferrets. Okay. We're going to give everybody a minute to put anything else into the comments. Okay, well, thanks for joining. And from prehistoric to present, my name is Ethan. This is Creature Guy Live Daily News. Happy International Seal Day. And remember that nothing is better than all animals all the time. Arf, arf.